Hey everyone, thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name is Justin, and as of last night, the NHL playoff schedule is set. Even though the NHL regular season isn't quite over because there's still a few games left in the North Division, the matchups are set, and therefore I wanted to go through my picks for this year's NHL playoff bracket. Alright, so before I get started here, it's important to note and point out that because of this year's weird format during the regular season where they only played within their divisions, I haven't had much of an experience watching most of these teams outside of the North Division. I think I have a pretty good grasp of how each team plays and the players on each team and my opinions from previous seasons, but I really don't have an up-to-date idea of really where these teams stand. So I'm going to base some of these just on a hunch and based on previous seasons and from what I've seen this season out of very limited viewing. But it is much more difficult to create a prediction bracket this year as opposed to previous years because I'm a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. I like to see the Toronto Maple Leafs face most of these teams and I get a really good grasp of how they play. So we'll hop right into it and we'll start with what I think I know best, which is the North Division. Toronto, Montreal, I mean, maybe I'm considered biased, but there's no disputing how dominant Toronto was this year. And I don't think that's really going to change in the playoffs. I think Montreal's definitely going to put up a very strong fight against Toronto. They're not going to make it easy whatsoever. But I will have Toronto coming out of that series. Toronto is, they have a tough time trying to make a series not go to 7 games, and they've lost all those. So hopefully they can close it out in a little bit less games this year. 6 games for Toronto. I think Montreal is capable of pushing it to 7 and also capable of winning the series, but I think Toronto will ultimately get it done. Going into the other series, which I think is a much, much closer matchup and a matchup that not a lot of people are giving much credit to, I think these teams are very, very even, all things considered. Now, Winnipeg is obviously on a very down stretch right now. They've been absolutely terrible since the trade deadline, but that doesn't change my opinion on them. I think Winnipeg is the second best team in the division. I think Edmonton finished higher in the standings because they took advantage of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl being absolute beasts as they usually are. But I think that, in my opinion, in a playoff series, I always err on the side of depth. And if Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl were to either get injured or get shut down a little bit by Winnipeg, which Winnipeg isn't a very strong defensive team, so it's not all that likely. However, I think Winnipeg is a much, much, much more well-rounded team than Edmonton. I think they've got the advantage in goaltending. I think the defensive side is quite close, even though Edmonton has Barrie and Nurse and Larson. I don't see them as having an excellent D-core, whereas Winnipeg has an excellent offensive core, and they can really do damage up front. I mean, you're talking about Ehlers, Connor, Scheifele, Wheeler, Stastny, Dubois. That top 6 is as good as I think just about anybody in the NHL. And I think that sort of depth is exactly what you need. And not to mention the third line right now producing incredibly with Mason Appleton and all the guys that they've got down the lineup, Andrew Kopp. So, to me, Winnipeg takes this series. I think it's going to go the stretch. I think these two teams match out very evenly. Obviously, McDavid has completely owned Winnipeg this year. I think he has 22 points this season just against Winnipeg. So he's going to go off. I think Connor Hellebuck will be able to really stand on his head in this series and hold it together. And then we'll just continue doing the first round here and go down to Colorado, St. Louis. Congratulations to Colorado for winning the President's Trophy, by the way. Really impressive, and of course Colorado coming in last place in the NHL just a few years ago. So to see them come in first place in the entire NHL is really a testament to how they've been able to turn things around. Joe Sakic obviously done a fantastic job, and I don't think that's going to change in this first round. I think St. Louis might sneak out a couple games here. St. Louis has been disappointing to me. I thought that they would be a lot better, but I think Colorado makes pretty easy work out of this. We'll go 5 games for them. I do think St. Louis is able to get a couple games out of Colorado, so maybe it'll go 6, maybe it'll go 7, but I still think Colorado definitely comes out on top on that one. And Vegas, Minnesota. Now, this one's interesting. I personally am not a fan of watching Minnesota play hockey. I really do not like their style of play. I'll still be paying attention to this series because first of all, I just watch all playoff series in the NHL, but also Vegas is going to be exciting to watch in this series, and I think it's going to be close. And I saw a couple predictions saying that Minnesota will actually shut down Vegas, and I think that if you were to look at the regular season, Minnesota did a great job against them. However, in my opinion, Minnesota is just too... how do I say this? They don't have any standout scorers. Obviously, Kaprizov has done a great job this year. I like the play of Fiala. They've got some players that can put the puck in the net, but they don't really have high-scoring producers, whereas Vegas has the likes of Pacioretty, Stone, players that can break a game open and put up 3 points in a game and really be a game changer on any given night. And I do think that is a big factor, especially when you're looking at a tandem of Fleury and Leonard in the net for Vegas when Minnesota doesn't have that player. I mean, maybe you're doing Kaprizov, but if you don't have someone that's able to step up in that game and really break the game open with their talent or their scoring ability, I think those goalies will be able to shut them down. I think Shea Theodore and Alex Pietrangelo and the defensive unit they've got there is also capable of shutting down the Minnesota guys. And Minnesota plays more of that shutdown, hard to play against style, that boring style of hockey. But I think Vegas definitely has the skill and the power to break through that. So for my take, I'm going to go Vegas, and I'm going to go in 6 games as well. I think that Minnesota, some people have this going to 7 games. I can definitely see it happening. I think Vegas will break through Minnesota, and they'll be able to get it done in 6 games. Now, this one is going to be extremely interesting. Both these series here, actually. I think Pittsburgh and New York have gone up against each other in recent history quite a bit, and New York has got the best out of Pittsburgh. So, that is where I'm leaning towards because of what history has shown us. However, I've doubted Pittsburgh in the past, and they are my second favorite team. And I've doubted them for a few years now. I just didn't think that they had the core that they used to have back in like the late 2000s, early 2010s. And they still find ways to do it. And then they won back-to-back cups just a few years ago. And this year, I thought they had no chance of, going far this year. I thought that they would actually miss the playoffs, and they clinched the division. Debatably one of the hardest divisions in the NHL, if not the hardest. That says a lot to me. The fact that Pittsburgh was able to come first in a division that had the likes of Washington, Boston, and the Rangers and the Islanders, and that says a lot about this Pittsburgh team. And when I look at it on paper, I don't see all that much. But then I also consider the fact that they didn't have Evgeny Malkin for a lot of this season, and were still able to do what they did. And with that said, I have to give it to Pittsburgh. I think New York, again, history has shown us that New York matches up quite well against Pittsburgh. They like playing against them. I think Barzal is going to be a factor, and he's able to step up and take over a game against Pittsburgh. Obviously, I've seen like Bavillier and Bailey and Brock Nelson putting up great numbers this year, but I got to put Pittsburgh. I'm going to say it's in 7 games. Wow, I have a lot of picks going, a lot of games, but yeah, I see it being a very tight matchup, and I'm just going to have to give the benefit of the doubt to Pittsburgh here. I don't know how you could dispute what they were able to do this season, and obviously their coaching has done an excellent job. Goaltending is a question mark for sure, but yeah, Pittsburgh in 7. And then Washington and Boston, the return of Zdeno Chara against his old teammates. Is he going to take it a little bit easier on Brad Marchand and Patrice Bergeron? Who knows? I don't think so. I sure hope he doesn't. I mean, I'm a Leafs fan, so I want to see them pay, but it's going to be an interesting series. I think Boston's got it. I think Boston's going to take advantage. I think Washington is a little bit banged up. We've seen Ovechkin be hurt a little bit, but I mean, Boston earlier this year was showing a lack of depth, a lack of scoring ability, which doesn't match up very well against Washington. However, the addition of Taylor Hall, that really added to their scoring. I think their top 6 is excellent. I think they play that hard style of hockey, and I think they've got the playoff experience. Obviously, Washington has a lot of playoff experience as well. I don't know. I just got a hunch. I think Boston's going to take it. It's not going to be an easy series. I want to say 7 games again, but I feel like that's too many games too many series going to 7 games. But sure, let's go 7 games. I think it's going to be a tight match. I really do. I think Boston's going to come out on top. I think Marchand does what he does way too well. I think Tom Wilson does what he does well as well, but he's also capable of crossing the line, maybe get suspended, who knows. So I don't know. I think that the maturity of the players on Boston, the experience in the playoffs, again, not to discredit the experience that Washington's had. Obviously, they have the more recent cup as well. But just a hunch, I think Boston's going to pull this one out a little bit. Now, this one's going to be a little bit easier. Nashville, Carolina. I think Carolina is a top 3 team in the NHL easily, if not top 2 or best. It would be very tight them going up against Colorado. Carolina has, in my opinion, the best defensive core in the league. They've got some stars up front. Sebastian Aho. Vincent Trocheck has played absolutely outstanding this year. The goaltending is the main question mark. However, I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue against Nashville. Nashville, I see similar to Minnesota in the way that they play. Obviously, they've got a little bit more scoring with like Michael Granlund and guys like that. They've got some stars. You know, Ekholm is able to really step up on the defensive end there, but Carolina is going to make light work of this. I want to say 5 games, but you know what? Let's go with the sweep. I'm always very, very hesitant to pick sweeps, but I feel like I probably should because they're definitely bound to happen at some point in the playoffs. So I'm going to go sweep Carolina over Nashville. And then another very interesting series here. Florida, Tampa Bay, the Battle of Florida. Florida, surprising most people, playing absolutely outstanding this year and coming out on top and getting home ice advantage over Tampa Bay. Who knows what kind of advantage that actually is with the fans that Florida has. But it's going to be a tight match. They're both highly, highly skilled teams. Of course, Tampa Bay is going to be expecting to get Nikita Kucherov and Steven Stamkos cap circumvention, but whatever. Back for game 1 of the playoffs. That's going to be a huge boost to their team, a team that I already thought had the advantage over Florida just because of their depth. Again, I err on the side of depth. Florida has decent depth this year, but I think that like they rely on Jonathan Huberdeau and Alexander Barkov. Their defense has been solid this year. Obviously, they got Bobrovsky in net, who's capable of stepping up, but Bobrovsky might not even be their number 1 starter anymore, with a couple of guys that have really stepped up for them. Whereas Tampa Bay, you got Kucherov, Stamkos, Point. You got Hedman, Sergachev. You got Vasilevsky in net. It's just too much depth, too good of a team, and the Stanley Cup defending champions. So I got Tampa coming out of this one. I'll put in 6 games. I just think that Tampa is way too talented, and they're going to be able to come out on top. Going back and going to round 2. Toronto, Winnipeg. Yeah, I've got Toronto coming out of this one. I think that Toronto's depth is just better than Winnipeg's. Toronto has shown that they can lock down Winnipeg, play a better defensive style of hockey. Winnipeg is, I think, a team that could definitely contend with Toronto coming out of this division. A few years ago, I actually said that Winnipeg was going to be the next Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup. So it's very possible because they do have a quite well-rounded team. However, Toronto plays a little bit more defensive when they match up. I think the forward group in particular of Toronto plays a more defensive style hockey than Winnipeg's offensive group. I think that Winnipeg will just give up way more chances, and Toronto has the ability to capitalize on those. So I'll put Toronto coming out of that series. Vegas, Colorado, the battle of the giants, I suppose, the 2 teams that were battling for the President's Trophy this year. I got Colorado. Colorado's just a beast of a team. They really are. And I think Vegas, you know, it's amazing what they've been able to do since they come in the league. I don't think they've missed the playoffs a single time. Kudos to them. I just think that it's very unfortunate the way that these playoffs kind of match up and set up. And it's unfortunate they have to play Colorado in round 2 if that ends up happening. But Colorado's just too good of a team right now. Boston, Pittsburgh. I got Boston. Again, I really don't want to discredit what Pittsburgh is capable of doing, and Pittsburgh is always capable of proving everybody wrong and winning a cup again. But Boston, I think that matchup is just theirs to take. They play that physical style of hockey, and what I've seen out of Pittsburgh is when they match up against a team that plays that physical style, they really get away from their game plan and try to match it. I saw it in a few different series that Pittsburgh went against Philadelphia. Philadelphia was just able to get under Pittsburgh's skin, and make them play their style of hockey, and that's just not Pittsburgh's game. If Pittsburgh sticks to the type of game that they played for the regular season, they'll win this series. But Boston is just capable of getting you to play Boston-style hockey, and nobody can do it better than the Bruins. So Boston will come out of that series. Oh boy, I'm just noticing for the first time now what that leads to. But and then Carolina, Tampa Bay. Wow, another really tough series with two fantastic teams. I'm going to give the edge here to goaltending. I think that Carolina is so good defensively and would be able to shut down Tampa Bay, but their goaltending is just too much of a question mark for me. Vasilevsky is too good for me to consider that Carolina can outscore Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is going to win that one. So now, we come down to our last little bit. Oh, perfect! The Leafs do not play Boston. Wow, what a sigh of relief. Okay, Colorado's beating Boston there. Boston I have on a little bit of a run there, but they're really not the team that they used to be. They've got an aging core that, while they've got that good veteran experience, I just don't see it as being still like elite and capable of beating Colorado. So I've got Colorado coming out of that one. And Toronto, Tampa Bay. A lot of people say that that Toronto cannot beat an American team. And I am not of that opinion. I think that Toronto is very capable of beating American teams, even some of the best American teams. But Tampa Bay is a tough opponent. If you were to give me Toronto against Boston or Toronto against, I don't know, anybody else really, I think Toronto comes out on top. Even like Toronto-Pittsburgh, I think Toronto comes out on top. Tampa Bay is a big issue. We've seen that Toronto is able to step up and play very, very good hockey, incredible hockey when they really have their backs against the wall and need to step up, excluding the playoffs. I'm talking this year. But they've also found ways to lose games that they absolutely should not have lost. This is a tough one. I say that series actually goes 7 games. It pains me to say it, I think Tampa Bay would come out on top. Now, I do think that Toronto is very capable of winning that kind of series. I would not be surprised if Toronto won it. But I also don't want to be a homer. I don't want to be biased. And just seeing the way that Toronto can collapse, I'm not ready to give them the benefit of the doubt. I do feel like Toronto can win the Stanley Cup this year. Absolutely. And I'm actually quite confident in their ability to do so. But if I had to make my choice, I'd pick Tampa Bay. So now we got Tampa Bay against Colorado. Very rarely do the two best teams or two of the best teams actually end up going to the Stanley Cup final. There's always some sleeper that makes it through. And perhaps that's Toronto this year, although they finished 5th in the league, so is it much of a sleeper? Anyway, Colorado's winning the Cup. It was only a few years ago that they came in last place. I mentioned that earlier. I think it was 4 years ago or 5 years ago they came in last place in the NHL. The way they've been able to turn around is fantastic. I just think that they've got a lot of depth, a lot of highly skilled players. Nathan MacKinnon is just an absolute game changer. He is fantastic. I'd say the second best player in the entire NHL behind Connor McDavid. Hopefully Grubauer can stay healthy, because I think that's what killed the Avalanche last year, the fact that they had to play Michael Hutchinson in the playoffs. That's never a good situation, but they've got Grubauer healthy again. So hopefully he can stay healthy. If he doesn't stay healthy, there's a lot of ifs in the playoffs. If Grubauer goes down, I don't think Colorado has a chance. But Cale Makar, Gabriel Landeskog, Nazem Kadri, fantastic playoff player if he doesn't get suspended. Colorado should have it. Total number of goals scored in the Stanley Cup final, I don't know, 6 games. Let's go like an average of 5 goals per game, 4 goals per game, right? I don't know, like 23, random number. But there it is. I think Colorado comes out on top. A lot of ifs in that. I still think that there's definitely a sleeper in there. I'm just not willing to really pick the underdogs just for sake of trying to pick a bracket that nobody else does. I'm not really submitting this one. This was just to share my opinions. I really hope Toronto can do it. I really do. I think that they are very capable of surprising people. I know a lot of people doubt their abilities to to win a series outside the Canadian division. People are already doubting the fact that they can win a series in general. Montreal could beat them in round 1. It's going to be interesting. But there we go. And they start tomorrow. So it'll be interesting. I'm really excited to watch these playoffs this year. Outside of the bubble, be able to watch some teams that I didn't get the chance to watch at all this season, just because I didn't tune into any of the American-only games. So it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see. Please let me know your thoughts on what you think is going to happen in this playoffs. Let me know what I got wrong. Let me know who your pick is to win the cup. And I guess they start tomorrow. Super, super, super exciting. Love playoff time. There's nothing better than the NHL playoffs. So I appreciate you watching. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. If you didn't like it, let me know as well. What didn't you like? What can I do better in future videos? And enjoy the playoffs. Root on your team. It's a difficult time not being able to be in the stands. I guess if you're American, you're able to. But it's the best time of the year. So enjoy it. Thanks for watching.